Today, we're going to talk about landing pages. In particular, how you can make your landing pages better, convert better, be user-friendly, increase your leads, and increase your sales. Today, we are speaking with Tas Bober, who is an excellent expert and a longtime friend of mine, it feels like. Tas is an expert in landing page optimization. She has been in-house for over 15 years before she branched out and started consulting B2B SaaS companies on how to level up their paid ads and their landing page experiences. Tas, super excited to have you on the call today.
I'm so excited. You reached out to me and I was like, immediately, yes, I don't even care what it's about. We're going to do this because we haven't had the chance to meet, even though we've talked for so long and been on this journey a little bit together, hand in hand. So I'm so excited to be here and support you as well.
Oh, likewise. So we definitely speak the same language. We both have a lot of experience in optimizing landing pages, going through the funnels, that we're going to agree and probably riff and rant on a lot of these topics. So let's dive into it. The first one is, what are the key mistakes that a B2B SaaS company will make with their landing pages?
You know, when I was in-house, I didn't have a lot of data to back it up, but having the ability to now post and do a lot of this like public platforming and evangelizing, making sure that I had the data to back it up, not just, just general agnostic data, but also having client data that I'm reviewing and seeing patterns now that I have exposure to a lot more companies. It's just baffling. The the data that, I mean, it was probably worse than I thought. And at that point, I'm like, okay, this is a burning problem, but people don't even realize it's a problem. So the first thing is 44% of B2B SaaS companies drive users to the homepage. That's a statistic from Instapage, which is a landing page tool. They did a study as well. And so you can go check them out, their report. That's not my data, but baffling amount. And it was funny because one of the ideas I had to post online was to do these like landing page roasts. It's so hard for me to find one that was made specifically for a paid ad. So I have to alternate other content ideas based on that. So that's the biggest thing, is not even creating landing pages before we get into the mistakes. People aren't even creating them, which is insane, right?
It is.
And then 70% of users don't scroll down. This is my own data that I took, from all the clients that I'm assessing, the audits that I run. I look at some of the scroll depth information that's in GA. Some of them have heat map data. 70% of them don't scroll below the fold. And people are like, well, how do I get to do it? Okay, so now my answer is I'm going to shove all the information above the fold. I'm like, well, that's not the answer. The answer is, how do you make the top part so enticing that they want to read more? Exactly. The only responsibility is to take them to the next section. And I think that takes a little bit of the pressure off of you. So that's always something that I kind of like evangelize and try to tell people, don't put that pressure on yourself. Don't stuff, make it a good experience. And then obviously the people start focusing on messaging, code, design, all of these things, but the message and the offer are your most important pieces, right? Where are you saying something in clear language that isn't jargonified? I've used this on like every podcast. I've just made up this word and I'm using it.
It's your own jargon. I love it.
It's my own jargon. And it's so bad because we love to use words like revolutionize, all in one. We're going to replace everything. That's like getting on a dating app and then you see a dude and it's like, I will replace every man in your life. Your dad, your brother, I'll be your partner. And it's like, but I don't need you to be all of those things. What are you going to help me with? I need a partner. I need a romantic partner. I don't need a dad. I don't need a brother. Like, I'm good. Thanks. So it's just one of those things too. And then just not taking care of the foundations, making sure the speed's good. You're not over designed. Crap ton of CTAs, navigation all over the place. It's just all too distracting. So when you look at that and that's the benchmark, it's actually quite easy to be above average, but not many companies are doing that. And that's what I'm here to help them with. So
100%. And if anybody reads the Funnel Candy newsletter, like I've railed against so many of these things, like remove the distractions, keep your CTAs simple, focus above the fold. Like if you're going to work on the page, start above the fold. And if you can get that right, great. But then figure out some clever ways to get people to go down the page. Removing the nav bar. That's such an easy way to do it. Like, hey, here's a page that contains all the information that you want. I'm not going to clutter it with like 8 different links to my about page or, these other pages. It's like, just put all the information in the right order, like you're speaking to a human being.
Exactly. And I think, and right before we hit record, we were talking about it, and I say, people always build these landing pages, especially in B2B SaaS, as I've worked in-house at a few. You're building it to please the stakeholders. You're not building it for user consumption or customer consumption. And that's when it becomes this quilt situation that does nothing, but then the marketer is held accountable for the results that are poor. And then they're like, oh, the campaign didn't work. Oh, the money went down the drain. So, yeah.
Yeah, when I was a consultant, I used to tell people there's the quality of the ideas, and then there's the quality of the execution. And you need an expert, frankly, to do both. And
yeah,
you can't just hand it off and be like, we've got this great idea, but the great idea is like, add social proof above the fold. It's like, okay, but there's like a million ways that you could do that. And how does that tie in with your messaging? How does that tie in with your offer? What is the key claim that you're trying to make? And why are you using social proof or how are you using social proof to prove that? Like there's all these extra considerations that most people are just like, we'll just throw a testimonial up there. It's like, it doesn't work that way.
No.
So we've we've railed against a lot about the mistakes that people make on landing pages. What are the key elements that people should include?
Okay, so the best landing pages, I call them ratchet. Even the best ads that perform are the ratchet ads, the ones that aren't overly designed. They're pretty minimalistic. It's being very clear on what the value proposition is, very clear on what the CTA is, and they're providing the user with something tangible and making a promise from the ad, right? That's coming in. It does not need to be the prettiest thing. I mean, people get stuck in these templates, companies like Unbounce and they do offer templates, which is great. Those templates aren't built with the mind frame of like, this is your best shot of success. It's just giving you a starting point and saying, here are some different elements, but it's up to you to put those together, make sure that the message is compelling before you worry about anything else. And I think people get so caught up on, oh, we got to have this imagery and is it approved? And, oh, we got to use this stock imagery. And, oh my gosh, my boss didn't. It's just, those are all the wrong things to focus on. So that's like the biggest piece. People love overstuffing. We want to actually deconstruct it. In the food world, they're like, here's a deconstructed pancake or eggs Benedict or whatever. So you want to deconstruct it. Here are all the elements. You want to remove as much distraction as we're talking about. Navigation, try not to link off the page. And people are like, whoa, your buyers are smart. Don't restrict them and put them in a cage. No, you kind of have to, because you made a promise and they're expecting you to deliver on it. So I will die on the hill of single CTAs, sprinkled across the page, no distractions, no links out. They're smart enough. If they want to do more exploration, they'll go to your homepage. They know how to get there. Trust me. And then the other thing is they don't call out the ICP, because one of the biggest things internally too is I would report and then be like, well, these aren't our ICP. This isn't our target audience. This isn't, a quality. We want director level and above. I'm like, okay, well, you never said that on the page. So if someone comes to Old Navy site and it says pants for kids, pants for women, pants for men, snow pants, what kind of pants are you talking about? So you got to qualify your audience, enable them with information to self-qualify, and that automatically drives the quality up, right? So if I said, and if you go on my website, it says the same thing. I say foundational paid ad strategy, landing page strategy for high growth B2B SaaS startups, right? I'm not doing like early stage because they don't have product market fit. I'm not doing super late stage. That's like they're public, they're like reach the maturity stage and they're not really in the high growth. I'm looking at the high growth. We either want to get acquired, we either want to go public, we have high targets, low resources, we need the strategy, we need to grow fast. That's who I'm talking to. Same thing. Call out the teams, call out InfoSec teams, call out marketing, heads of marketing, whoever you're talking to. And I do that even in my posts. I always say for B2B SaaS, at least 3 or 4 times a week. So no one gets it twisted and applies it to the wrong type of company and business.
Absolutely. One of the lessons my mentor taught me early on was that you attract to the degree that you repel. And if you say, hey, I'm B2B SaaS mid-stage, like, you know exactly who you're talking to. And as someone in your audience, I'm like, yeah, that's me. Like I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
For
exactly.
anyone listening, ICP does not stand for Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah, my husband always says that too, and he's not in marketing. You're right. I should not be miss acronym. ICP, ideal customer profile, more than just demographics, but maybe it's also technographics. What tech stack do they use? You know, you could niche down based on WordPress, Webflow, whatever. I'm pretty tool agnostic, but I focus on heads of demand gen, heads of growth, heads of marketing, and helping them with some conversions there. So yes, clarity on that. That's good. Thank you for calling that out.
Of course. And so when we're looking at the landing page, how does user experience play into that? What type of strategies would you employ to make sure that people have a good user experience, which is a phrase I cringe to even say, but
I know,
it's
right?
a jargon term for saying like, how do you make your website easy to use and friendly?
Yeah. I always say, well, the first thing is if it doesn't load, then you can say bye to all, all your website conversions, right? Because no one's going to interact with the page. So I always tell people focus on the functionality as well. And by functionality, I mean, if it takes longer than 3 seconds, people are just, they're out. That's just kind of the world we live in now. There are actually quite a few ways people get worried and scared about how to optimize the speed for their sites. It's actually not that hard. If you have a development resource, there are multiple ways you can do it. You can run, there's a bunch of free tests, but really if you just go into your console and you run a lighthouse test in there, it literally tells you step by step how to optimize and shave off time. And sometimes it's the things that I'm also telling you to remove, like imagery that's not relevant, things that you don't need. All of those elements that you're removing actually helps make it feel a little bit lighter and will make it load faster. So that's always the first thing, is just focus on the functionality over everything else. There are also like little friction points, like do you need all the fields in the form? Probably not. Usually that's to satisfy sales or your CRM, or to make them an MQL, you need 15 fields. Ask them only for information that's necessary, and ask them at the right time as well.
Yes.
And then design elements wise, you want to go according to how users read information. Typically, at least in the US, it is left to right. Yep. And the F format, which is they're going to skim the headline first, subhead, and then everything underneath that. And then they go vertically down and they skim before they dive deep. So you want to make sure that they can absorb information in that first skim. So that's always where I'm like, don't use too many font sizes, font types, limit it to 3 so that it shows them some kind of hierarchy, because that's how the brain detects patterns. And that's why I'm like, people are like, oh, I can optimize landing pages. I'm like, yeah, sure you can. There's a lot of psychology that goes into it as well. It's an art and a science, right? And then if you are going to use any kind of asset like media, like videos, animations, or imagery, you want to make sure that they're compressed, they're relevant. Don't just use an image to provide visual interest. People would much rather have 5 lines of text that give them exactly what they want than you just making this long scrolling page just because it looks beautiful, but it doesn't do anything. And SaaS is so, they're the biggest culprits with this. It's like, I'm going to use tons of white space and tons of imagery and all of the stuff, and it does nothing. It's another point of friction. And then I see a lot of like automatic moving elements. So like carousels with like, moving logos, moving automatic animations. And I'm like, okay, that causes some visual interest, but A, it's a distraction. B, you're now 20% of the population has some kind of disability. You are now excluding a good chunk of the population because they either can't process that information, they can't see it, in which case their browsers won't even load it. And then if most of the time they use it for social proof, well, that's bad because then your social proof is gone. So simple, static, quick.
Love that. And it's one of those things where it's not even, it solves so many problems. Like you said, it makes the sites load faster. It's a better user experience because it gives people the information that they need. We talked earlier about like your audience is smart. So don't dumb things down. Just be like, here's the information in a logical order. You can follow it top to bottom, just work your way down through the page. And instantly, like I advised like over 140 companies when we were consultants. I looked at a lot of heat maps. I looked at a lot of user tests. I ran user tests. And it's astonishing how people will not scroll down the page. They'll click on elements that they shouldn't. If you do a user test, they will go where you don't want them to, because we're trained to, we don't really think when we're using websites. Things are so fast nowadays. We just kind of like figure stuff out because there's not really an opportunity cost to it from a user perspective. Like, oh, I'll just click here and check this out. No, that's not it. Or I'll click here and I'll check that out. And you're like, no, just slow down, And like,
Yeah. And I think it's like, like with reels and TikToks and stuff, you start to get lost. You see a reel, you're like, oh, this person's interesting. You go to their profile. Now you're scrolling through all their reels through history. And it's that content binging thing does not need to happen on a landing page experience, because what ends up happening is they forget why they initially came to you in the first place. And then there's this element of FOMO. So if you have multiple links in there, they're like, oh, okay, I could start a free trial, but then what is this interesting use case over here? I mean, it's like Dora, right? For like landing pages. And so they go over there because they're worried they'll never be able to get back to that. And so they'll go in and then now they're lost and they're not going to come back to their original point. So, okay.
All right. So you mentioned calls to action. What's your approach to creating a compelling call to action, and how many calls to action should you have throughout the funnel?
I'll die on this hill on the page, not in the funnel, on the page.
Yeah, on the page.
I would say 1. And again, it's the whole delivering on what you promised them in the ad copy. So again, going back to the Old Navy example, where if you said, hey, come check out Loom versus Vidyard, right? So if Old Navy's like, come check out these pants, and then they drop you on their homepage, right? That's a shitty experience. I mean, so you want to deliver on the promise of your ads. So if you're saying, come check out all these use cases of Loom versus Vidyard, and you come to this page and then it goes through everything. And it's like, okay, the primary CTA here is, hey, and you can start Loom for free, but here are some competitive comparisons between the two of us. That's relevant content. You have one CTA that's going through. And even yesterday, I had a conversation with a friend who's in ops, revenue ops, and he said, what do you think of my CTA here? And it said push for ops. And I said, no. Immediately changed that, because the problem is that it's cute, but people are going to be confused. If I push this button, what's going to happen? Is there going to be like an ops explosion? No, you need to just talk to them about push for ops. It's like, oh, I'm scared. I don't know what am I pushing? So I always say, people always over engineer like what they should say and trying to be really cute. I would keep it short. I would keep it very universal. There's a reason why learn more or start free trial or book strategy session or whatever is the CTAs that people use, because they're clear and people expect them. So don't over engineer that. Focus all your cognitive bandwidth on the actual offer and the message, not on the CTA as much, right? Just have the CTA sprinkle down the page and keep it consistent. You call it start a free trial. Don't be like, start again for 30 days. They're going to think it's all different things. Same thing all the way through the page.
Yep. That's why, if for anybody listening, if you don't know what the CTA should be, just as a nice mental hack, just start with the word get. Like, get your free trial, get this free download, get this free resource, get started today. Like, it forces you to start thinking, hey, there's a human being on the other side of this that is going to press this button. I need to tell them what's going to happen.
And what they're going to get. Yeah, exactly. Setting the expectation. Absolutely.
All right, so we've got a few more minutes and I am super keen to dive into this part. How does research and analytics, how does this play a role in landing page optimization?
This is the most ignored aspect.
Absolutely.
Because what ends up happening is, and I don't fault the marketing teams, right? Because we are thrown 1,000 campaigns. You work so hard to get it all approved. You throw it out the door and you move on to the next thing. That's the number one problem, is because you never revisit the information. And even if you do in like your monthly reporting, you come back to it, you report on how that landing page is done, but then you do nothing with that information. You report it up to your CMO, your head of marketing, and then you're like, all right, moving on to the next thing, never to be revisited again. But you take that information and you go back and then you start to refine. And I think that's the part where people pick volume over quality. So you don't need to sit there and manage 30, 40 landing pages for different keywords, right? If you picked a core 5 or 6, your pricing, your demo, some use cases, maybe a competitor comparison, a couple of pages there, those are the ones that you're focused on. That's your engine that's always running. And you start to do optimizations there, test different messaging, come up with like 3 iterations that you're going to test every few weeks and collect the data and make the best shot success that you can then take and apply to the native pages. I mean, that's magic that we're just ignoring. And we have that ability at our fingertips. So I always say frequently review the data. So typically weekly or bi-weekly, understand where the users are getting stuck. So typically heat map data will tell you if they're getting stuck in a spot or if they're engaging with a spot well, and then you can move that up or down or take the other stuff away that are distractions. And then you add in tests every couple of weeks or so. So can I test new copy unless it's working? Can I test a new CTA if people aren't clicking? So I call this troubleshooting the funnel, where if you're getting a ton of traffic, but not a lot of clicks, now you know there's a messaging issue. If you're getting a lot of clicks, but then something's falling off in the back end, now you know it's a conversion or technical issue. So that's where we start to look at it. I know it's not linear, but at least it'll give you an indicator if things are moving in a positive direction or not.
Nice. And for those of you listening, if you wanted to collect that data, some tools that I've used in the past, Tas, love to hear yours on these as well. Hotjar, you can get started with them. I believe they still have a free plan. You get heat maps, shows what elements people are clicking on, how far down the page they're scrolling. You can use their surveys, pops up on the page and says, hey, before you take off, could you tell us why you didn't buy or why you didn't sign up for a free trial? And you can actually get all that feedback from people. User testing is another great way to get feedback. One other hack that I always employed, which was if you're working with a SaaS company or if you're a solopreneur and you're running your own business, the same applies. Talk to your salespeople, talk to your customers. Talk to both of them. And if you are the salesperson, then go out there and make sure you know what words actually convert people when you're talking to them on the phone. And then take those words and put them on your landing page. It's like,
I love this because this is something that I talk about, and I should have actually done it here in the beginning, which is my framework for approaching this is very customer focused and product led. And even if it's a sales led company, it's still product led because we've somehow in B2B moved away from talking about the product. Someone was just like, only talk about the outcomes. Excuse me. And so going back to the Old Navy examples, imagine if they never mentioned the word pants, but they said, we promise your legs will be warm. And you're like, cool, how?
Yeah.
Just trust us. Look at all these other people who've bought things from us that have kept your legs warm. That's like an impossibility to think about. Would you ever purchase just an outcome? They want to know the how, they want to know the capabilities, they want to know the features. And talking to your sales team, your customer team, right? Your customer success teams, and your product team to understand what features and what pain points we're mapping to. That's what's going to get you the compelling message on your page. You collect that research ahead of time, and that's almost step one that I do with my clients. I have a framework. We collect questions. I understand the sales process. We leverage that same information on the landing pages, right? It's a loop, not a line. So that's always something that I look at as well.
And that's why we speak the same language. Start with the work your way backwards. I know we're up for time. Tas, this could go way longer. I feel like you and I could just teach classes on this stuff, and I would love to.
One day.
So tell us, where can people learn more about you and get more great advice? Because you have a lot to give.
Thank you. I have a website, but I'm very active on LinkedIn. So please find me on LinkedIn. It's Tas, T-A-S, last name Bober, B-O-B-E-R. And I share my frameworks, my ideas, all of the stuff we talked about very, very freely there. I'm a big proponent of free education. So come learn, say hi, and I'd love to chat with all of you.
Excellent. Tas, you dropped an absolute bomb of knowledge. I really appreciate that. And we'll link to all of these additional resources in the call notes. So thank you so much. And for those of you listening, for more great advice, please do visit us at funnelcandy.com. Thanks again, Tas.
Thank you.